Hey everyone, Beano Nintendo here, and I'll start this video out like a lot of YouTubers start their apology videos by saying, "This wasn't the video I wanted to make." But in this case, it's not because I did anything wrong, more so just that I have my hour-and-a-half long video essay, The Media That Shaped My Move to Minnesota, almost done now, and the video that I wanted to make right now, I realized would be really time-consuming, and I kind of just want to get a quick thing out now so that I can focus back on editing my video essay and get that out to you. So, I'm going to take a page out of Jan Measley and Pixel's book and do just like a pretty simple, easy-to-edit video on letters of the alphabet. Something that should be accessible to literally everyone. I'm going to approach it from kind of a unique angle. I have been working for the state for several months now over the phone, and I deal a lot with Minnesota IDs, and whenever people list out their ID numbers, or they spell their names or whatever, I have to deal with letters and having to interpret them over the phone. And there are some letters that are very easy, and some that are very hard, and so I wanted to take a moment to rank these letters as a way to kind of share a little bit of my experience with you without giving any personal details from any of the customers away. We are arranging this like a tier list, and we're working our way from the bottom up. So let's start with the F tier. So these are the letters that are hardest to interpret over the phone, the easiest to get confused with one another. We start with a group of 4. B, D, V, and Z. Now, these 4, let me tell you, there are a bunch of letters of the alphabet that rhyme with each other. In fact, over a third of the alphabet rhymes with the letter B. But some of these E sound letters, they have distinct enough consonants before them that they're not that easy to mix up, or they're just not commonly recurring enough to really be that big of a deal. But these 4, they seem to pop up all the time in this job. And B and D are very easy to confuse with each other. V and Z are very easy to confuse with each other. And there are certain languages like Spanish, they don't really have a hard V sound. So a lot of the time someone will say B and they really mean V. I will say that if I had to rank these 4 relative to each other, I would say that Z is the best of the bunch because occasionally, you'll get someone who isn't a native English speaker or maybe is a native English speaker but comes from Canada or the UK or that sort of thing, and they will say Z, and that makes things very easy. The other thing is they say Z as in zebra or zebra. That's the one that most people use, and that one, it's not super easy to get mixed up. For B as in boy, D as in dog, there are still other words that start with consonants that rhyme with B and D, but Z as in zebra is pretty distinct, so it is the best of the worst. Next, and I do have to apologize for anyone who works in special effects or sound effects, but F, S, and X all sound way too similar to each other. The thing that makes all of these letters definitively F tier and not any higher is the fact that there are multiple of them that sound similar to each other. There are some other letters we'll get to later on that do sound similar to each other, but it's only 2 letters that sound alike, so you have a 50-50 shot. Having to troubleshoot multiple times in order to get the spelling of a word correct because of a letter like F or S or X or B, D, V, Z is just so frustrating. And it's for that reason that all of these letters land in F tier. pretty fitting, honestly. So that does it for the F tier. Now let's move on to the D tier. These letters I definitely do get mixed up with each other quite a bit, but they are a little bit more distinct than the F tier, and so I don't find myself getting them mixed up quite as often. But just like the F tier, we are starting out with a forfer with C, G, P, T. They're a little bit easier to manage than the B, D, V, and Z examples. They all kind of have distinct enough sounds, but they're still easy to mix up with each other and easy to mix up with those previous examples. Then we have M and N. Two letters that I hear all the time working for the state of Minnesota. These two, they're bad. I will often hear one of them as the other, but the saving grace of them is that they only really sound like each other. So you have a 50-50 shot. Chances are, if I type an ID number in with an N and it's not pulling anything up, if I correct it to an M, it will, and vice versa. Finally, in D tier, we have the letter E, which is the last of our E sound letters. And for me personally, I do think it is the best of the E sound bunch, just because of the purity of it. For it, not adding a consonant in front, there's nothing to mess up. You can't, kind of do the wrong tongue motion and say the wrong consonant. It's just E. It is just plain and simple, and the lack of consonant makes it sound more distinct. Also, when people are clarifying the letter E, they will usually say E as an elephant, and there aren't really any words that start with a letter other than E that sound similar to elephant. So that makes it pretty easy to interpret, relatively speaking, although, again, it still rhymes with 8 other letters in the alphabet, so I can't put it any higher than D tier. Next, we're moving on to C tier. These are letters that I do mix up sometimes, but it's not that often. Bottom of C tier, we have the letter A. A is interesting because it sounds like the letter H, and it also rhymes with J and K, although it is kind of in an interesting position because I feel like J and K are both rare enough letters and they have distinct enough consonant sounds that you can usually tell when people are saying them over the phone. But A is a little bit more ambiguous because it has all those things going for it. And also, I'm going to put H just above it because H, in addition to sounding like A, both of them sound like the number 8, which is kind of a extra factor to this, which could dock it even more points because none of the other letters really sound like any of the numbers. Granted, this sounding like a number thing is really only relevant during certain very specific situations, like when someone's reading off a confirmation code or VIN number that has a random mix of letters and numbers. Most of the time, you won't have letters and numbers right next to each other. So if this came up more often, it would probably be lower tier, but as is, I think bottom of C tier makes perfect sense for these two. Next up in C tier, we have the letter I, which rhymes with the letter Y, but I am choosing to separate them for the time being because I has a few things going on with it that Y doesn't. And they're things that unfortunately play into the negative. With the letter I, if you say it with a heavy enough accent, it sounds like ah. So I'll get a lot of immigrants on the phone where English isn't their first language, and they will say ah, and I won't know if they mean I or A, if they're going more based on trying to pronounce the name of the letter or just trying to communicate the sound that the letter makes. So that is a factor. Another factor is since there aren't that many words that people, think of off the top of their head that start with I, it can kind of slow down the pace of a call. They might go I as in, and then I'll have to go like ice cream. And they're like, yeah, I like ice cream, which, does count for something. Time is money after all. Next, we have J and K, which do rhyme with each other and rhyme with A, but their consonant sounds are unique enough that you're probably not really going to get them mixed up with each other. But that is kind of a double-edged sword, because if you do the A as in apple, D as in dog, that sort of thing, people have a hard time coming up with words for these too. I usually go J like jelly or K like kite, but I'm not sure that those are the best words to use either, so you can let me know some better words to use in the comments if you'd like. But at the top of C tier, we have Y, which does rhyme with I, so it isn't a B or an A or an S tier, but I will say that Y is an infrequent enough letter, but a letter that people can think of a few very specific words for that I think makes it pretty easy to deal with. If you're not sure if something starts with Y, you can say Y as in yellow, Y as in yogurt. Those are words that don't really sound like other words, so they're pretty good. Top of C tier. So at the bottom of B tier, we have L and R, left and right. These two, they don't really sound similar in most contexts. However, Asian languages don't really distinguish between the two sounds, so if you do have an Asian language speaker on the phone, sometimes they can sound similar, so that's why they can't be any higher than B tier. Also in B tier, we have Q and U. These letters do rhyme with each other, so they can be mixed up, but also the Q sound is so distinct, and you can very easily narrow it down with Q like question. That is the default word that most people would use. The A tier is brought to you by the letter O, as in the only entry in the A tier. It gets this unique distinction because nothing rhymes with O, but it does also look like a 0, plus the S tier letter has something going for it that no other letter in the alphabet has. So I can't definitively say that O is the best. But that S tier letter is W, and what a massive W for W, because W is the only letter in the alphabet that has 3 syllables. There is no way that you're mixing it up with any other letter. When I'm going with the A as in apple, B as in boy strategy, there are some times where I'll spell out, and I will do that for every letter except W. I will not say W as in woods or W as in will or anything like that, because everyone already knows when you say W what letter you're referring to. It is perfect as it is. So there you go. That's my list of letters from hardest to easiest to make out over the phone. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Like I said, this is kind of just an appetizer before my big video essay goes out, which you can actually watch the first 5 parts of on Patreon right now. And you can even get a little bit more context into this video when the full video releases. And I go into how I got this fancy government job a little bit. Keep your eyes peeled for that. I do promise that once the full video essay is out, there will still be enticing little goodies on Patreon and reason to sign up for as little as $1 a month. Like these lovely people here. But okay, that's enough shilling. Until next time, this is Beano Nintendo signing off.